Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Trump is in New York City ahead of his appearance at the courthouse tomorrow. Supporters gathered to welcome him as he entered Trump Tower. NTD is on the ground. New revelations about the Chinese spy balloon. Officials say it did manage to collect sensitive intelligence on U.S. military sites, even though the administration tried to block it. We'll bring you the latest live from the White House. More storms and tornadoes are expected to hit multiple states tomorrow. Survivors of Saturday's storm system now having to seek shelter once again. And a Russian pro-war blogger was killed in an explosion at a cafe in Russia. Officials detained a woman who says she gave him a gift that exploded. The latest on former President Trump's indictment. Trump is now in New York City ahead of his arraignment tomorrow. He arrived at Trump Tower late this afternoon. NTD's Melina Wisecup is on the ground with more.
And everything has pretty much returned back to business as usual, and that's been the case pretty much all day. Trump arrived at around 4:30 p.m. here at Trump Tower, and he arrived very discreetly. And he walked in the front doors, briefly waving before going inside. But pretty much everything has been business as usual all day. We've been here since noon, and the only difference is that there's a little bit more heightened security. New York Police Department officers will be on standby until tomorrow when Trump heads to Lower Manhattan for his arraignment. And President Trump today broke silence, finally commenting on this, saying that he has faith in the legal system. However, critics of Trump's indictment and some Trump supporters that we heard from today, of course, are feeling the exact opposite. So we'll play some of those interviews for you right now.
I think our, was the Attorney General, I guess that's his title. I believe he is misguided in the usage of our taxpayer dollars to persecute the President of the United States.
This is the soft equivalent of a show trial in the old Soviet Union. Or one could at least observe that it is veering dangerously and precipitously close to such practices which have been abhorred for decades since.
So I'm just here for moral support for Donald Trump. Alvin Bragg, Soros funded, he's militantly opposed to Donald Trump. He campaigned on getting Donald Trump from day one on anything. So this is just sort of a crime, a charge that he dug up. He's throwing everything at the wall, and this is sort of one that he thinks will stick.
And we're kind of excited about it because Donald Trump's going to get a 10 to 15 point boost in the polls tomorrow, which I call the Trump bump. So bring it on, DA. I mean, anybody who says it's not a political campaign against the president and former president is lying. Period. I mean, there's no way to just call it a witch hunt. They're just lying.
So former President Trump will stay here at Trump Tower for the night before making his way to Lower Manhattan tomorrow for that arraignment. Now, what's going to happen tomorrow? Well, much about how the optics will actually play out, how it will all look, is more or less unclear right now because this is very unprecedented. Courthouse officials may skip certain procedures that they would normally take during this type of arraignment, such as taking his mugshot, for example. Fingerprints most likely will be taken, but there's just certain security risks that they're just not willing to take because of how high profile this case is. Trump is expected to appear in court at 2:15 p.m. tomorrow. And at that time, hopefully we will have more details about this indictment because as of right now, Steph, we know very little about the actual charges against former President Trump. The only thing that we pretty much know about this case is that he's being accused of misrecording campaign funds, $130,000 that was given to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, which he recorded as legal expenses. So this is pretty much all we know about the case. But as for exactly which counts former President Trump is being charged on, this has all been sealed by the district attorney. So hopefully tomorrow we'll have more details about this. NTD will be on the ground at the courthouse all day for this unprecedented event, marking this moment in history. Steph, back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Melina. And we'll have that live coverage of Trump's arraignment tomorrow starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to tune in for that at ntd.com or on our YouTube channel. Now, earlier today, I spoke with Epoch Times senior columnist and founder and president of the Brownstone Institute, Jeffrey Tucker, for his analysis of the former president's indictment. Let's see that now. Jeffrey Tucker, thanks for coming on again. Welcome.
Well, it's nice to see you. Thank you.
You too. Now, in response to the indictment of former President Trump, you wrote an op-ed in the Epoch Times titled "Anarcho-Tyranny Unleashed in the United States." Now, you're not a Trump loyalist and have been critical of the former president. However, his indictment has got you very concerned about the future of America. Could you tell us why?
Well, it seems like this is the return of the state to its pre-modern purpose, which is to use to punish political enemies. That's the main purpose of the state. If you read Machiavelli, that's what you find. You know, the purpose of the prince is to punish any competitor to the office. And now, modern states, as we have in the United States, imagine they would be different. There would be equality under the law, there would be fairness, it would be ruled by the people through the representatives with voting, that sort of thing. And it was more or less working. But the last several years have seen this very grim state of affairs in which the powers of the courts, in particular, and the whole administrative state apparatus have been turned against political enemies. We're seeing it in every area of life, mostly to advance woke ideological agendas, the DNC and the administrative state. So to turn on Trump this way for this ridiculous claim that really has nothing to do with anything he actually did wrong. It's a technicality that can be interpreted a number of different ways, and I'm pretty sure they're interpreting it the wrong way, just for purposes of public humiliation and disenfranchisement and the removal of him from the race is a brutal way to go about politics. Is the sort of thing that's not supposed to happen under the American system. Indeed, the whole American system was structured to prevent this sort of thing. But that is exactly what's going on right now. And it's particularly egregious to affect Trump because we're talking about the former president, you know, the highest office. And what these people are essentially saying to us is that this is an illegitimate man representing illegitimate people in an illegitimate interest, and we're not going to allow it in the United States. We're going to use all power of the state to stop it and suppress it. And this is, to my mind, a pre-modern way to go about politics.
Now, you said there's hope, but only if we realize the darkness of the present moment. Mm-hmm. If these charges really are purely political, as you've said, what is the way forward from here?
Well, the first thing we need to do is realize what the fullness of what's going on. This event is not happening in isolation. It comes after several years of an intensification of a kind of war against a whole faction of the American public that really does want Republican forms of government back, wants their freedoms and their rights back, and they're basically saying you can't have them. And so he represents a kind of demonization of at least half the American public. I would say a lot more than that. And the tentacles of this beast that's going after Trump right now reach down to every level of society, every state, every county, every city, every neighborhood. And it's a coordinated effort. So we need to realize that and then not be demoralized by it, but by angered by it and empowered by it and act in whatever way that means in your life to stop it, because it's not our destiny as a nation to go the way of a banana republic.
All right, thank you so much. Jeffrey Tucker, Epoch Times senior columnist and founder and president of the Brownstone Institute. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Brand new details today on the Chinese spy balloon that flew across the U.S. before being shot down in February. According to senior U.S. officials, the balloon was able to gather intelligence from several sensitive military sites. NTD's Iris Tao joins us live from the White House. Iris, tell us about the latest developments here.
Good evening, Steph. What we're seeing right now is a major twist in the story about what the Chinese spy balloon was able to do while flying over the U.S. We know that senior administration officials told CBS News that the balloon was actually able to collect intelligence from several U.S. military sites while flying over them. And that's despite any efforts by the administrations to try to block it from doing so. And today we hear from the White House, as you can see right behind me, senior administration official John Kirby, that the White House maintains that the balloon was not able to collect anything that's additive or anything in addition to what the Chinese government was able to collect using conventional satellites. And that's despite what the administration officials told us about the balloon that was actually able to transmit data that it collected from the ground real time back to Beijing. And of course, the administration is also maintaining that the U.S. was able to limit its ability to prevent it from collecting any additional information. But also we know that U.S. and China are experiencing this rise in tension as all of this happened. We know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken has still not rescheduled his trip to China, even following he canceled his trip to China following the balloon incident. And also we know that China is now issuing a new wave of threats against the U.S., especially as Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen is set to transit the U.S. and potentially meet with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in the U.S. this upcoming Wednesday. Steph.
Thanks, Iris. And we'll continue to follow that story as it develops. Now, storms are expected to hit multiple states tomorrow. Communities from Texas all the way up to Chicago could be impacted. That's after tornadoes that killed dozens of people over the weekend.
The National Weather Service says another storm system is expected to develop Tuesday. The agency posted this picture showing the huge swaths of land from Texas up to the Great Lakes that might be impacted. The areas shown in red have the greatest risk of severe weather. Affected areas could see strong tornadoes, large hail, and dangerous wind gusts. Chicago is set to elect a new mayor on Tuesday. Due to the weather warning, the Chicago Board of Elections reminded people that they can vote or return their vote by mail ballot at an early voting site ahead of Tuesday. Experts say Tuesday's storm system might look similar to the one we saw over the weekend, affecting the same areas. At least 32 people lost their lives after dozens of tornadoes ravaged communities in the South and the Midwest Friday and Saturday. The tornadoes were sparked by the big storm system and left residents assessing the damage and picking up the pieces. Tuesday's expected storm system means the same people could be impacted again, like 80-year-old Jane Smith, whose home in Arkansas was destroyed over the weekend.
We were in the basement. 3 children next door, their parents, the dog, our dog, my 3 grandchildren, my husband and son. But you didn't realize, you had no idea it was doing this much damage out here. It was so fast.
Fortunately, people were quick to help each other after the storm's devastating impact. On Sunday, Arkansas aid workers ramped up relief efforts.
We started coordinating as the storms were still rolling in because we knew that there would be a need. So what we've been doing over the past couple of days is preparing meals in our commercial kitchen and then pushing them out into the community.
President Biden declared a major disaster in Arkansas on Sunday, ordering federal aid to help with the recovery. Reporting by Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Wisconsin voters are electing a new state Supreme Court justice. And whoever wins that race will have a significant impact in the state and possibly on the entire nation. Here's that story.
Wisconsin is in the midst of the most expensive judicial election in U.S. history. As of last week, nearly $45 million has been spent, far outstripping the previous record of around $15 million.
If you had told people who were election watchers 10 years ago that there would be $40 million spent, or that a candidate on their own would have raised $12 million like Janet Protasiewicz is, they would have laughed in your face.
Liberal Janet Protasiewicz is running against conservative Daniel Kelly. Wisconsin's Supreme Court currently holds a 4-3 conservative majority, but a conservative justice is retiring, so a winner will determine whether conservatives maintain that majority or if it flips to liberal control. The election is technically nonpartisan. However, neither candidate seems to hide their ideological bent, like Protasiewicz's take on abortion.
Judge Janet Protasiewicz believes in women's freedom to make their own decisions when it comes to abortion.
Daniel Kelly. Or Kelly, who's accusing his opponent of being soft on crime.
We can't afford to have judges who put their own agendas above the law. It's time we start prioritizing justice again, not politics.
Vote Daniel Kelly for Wisconsin Supreme Court.
According to a Wisconsin professor of journalism, Wisconsin Supreme Court could have nationwide impact during the 2024 presidential election.
Wisconsin is always a very close state in presidential election politics, and usually there's some kind of legal action taken after the election. And so when we come to the next presidential election, we would again suspect the election will be close. We suspect that the loser might have an incentive to pursue legal action. That would go to the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And so who wins this race will control which side has the majority in that case.
However, although conservatives held the majority, the court sided against former President Trump's case in 2020. The election for the new justice is set to be held on Tuesday.
And if you have any news tips or feedback for our show, you can email us at eveningnews@ntd.com. Coming up, a Pfizer COVID vaccine trial case is dismissed. We hear from the whistleblower's attorney about why they're appealing and what's at stake. And in college basketball, someone will be crowned champion tonight as Uconn takes on San Diego State for all the marbles. NTD's Dave Martin looks at the contenders. That and more coming up.
Henry Repeating Arms manufactures a line of classic American-made rifles and shotguns. With over 200 models to choose from and a wide variety of finishes and calibers, there's a Henry that's right for you. Every purchase is backed by our lifetime warranty and award-winning customer service. We invite you to order a copy of our free catalog and decals. Simply call the number on your screen or visit henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.
Miss NTD, the first NTD Global Chinese Beauty Pageant. Miss NTD, Gold Award $10,000.
A judge has dismissed a case against Pfizer over what the whistleblower says were botched trials for the COVID vaccine at a company Pfizer contracted to do some of its trials. Brooke Jackson alleges that the trial violations she uncovered mean the government was defrauded when it paid for the vaccine, and that could have big implications for Pfizer. But the judge in the case did not agree. However, Jackson is planning to appeal, and earlier today, I spoke with attorney Warner Mendenhall from the law offices representing Brooke's case for his take on the judge's reasoning and what's next. Warner Mendenhall, welcome to our show. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, in this case we're looking at, what was the judge's reasoning for dismissing the case, and what were the grounds?
Well, the one of our theories was called fraudulent inducement to enter into a contract. And it is really interesting because what the judge said is, well, the contract was entered in before any of the false statements or fraudulent activities occurred, so they couldn't have fraudulently induced them to enter into the contract. Secondarily, the judge pointed out that the government knew of Brooke Jackson's allegations. Basically, they knew of the fraud allegations from September of 2020, and they continued to pay. And they continued to further authorize the shots for other age groups. I think there were 3 or 4 additional authorizations that came through since entering into the contract. So because of those reasons, the judge said, well, it's not material to the government, so we're not going to hold Pfizer liable in this courtroom.
And what do you think is the significance of this case being dismissed?
Well, clearly, we're going to appeal this. The essence of the bargain is that the American people would get a safe and effective vaccine in which the benefits outweighed the risks. And at this point, it's very clear, based on Pfizer's own data, that the shots are not safe. They are clearly not effective. I don't even think that they're presenting, even if you've had the shot, that it can prevent, the 50% or more infection rate. So people are getting infected once they've had the shot. And the benefits clearly don't outweigh the risks. So they have failed on every single count that was of essence in this contract with the American people. And we think the appellate courts will recognize that. So that's kind of where this stands right now.
And what does that mean for vaccine injured individuals seeking compensation or accountability from vaccine manufacturers such as Pfizer?
Well, for one, I think Brooke Jackson's case is a keystone case with that, because if they entered into this contract fraudulently and committed fraud in the clinical trials, then there is no protection for the injuries that the shots have occurred. So we're going to continue to fight, take this up on appeal, and we hope this will help to open up a pathway for those individuals who've been injured by the shots. And interestingly, what I see too is that more and more individuals appear to have been injured. Some of the effects of the shot are long-term, so they don't show up for months or even years. And from what we're seeing in our practice, more and more individuals are showing up with injuries, and there have been more and more deaths that you can relate back to being caused by the shot.
If your appeal is successful, what's the significance of that?
Well, that's the reason that Pfizer is fighting so hard. And believe me, it's not just Pfizer. Other companies have engaged in similar activities, similar fraudulent activities. So if we were to win in this lawsuit, Pfizer would be bankrupt as a company. So we are hoping that we end its corporate life, seize its assets, and distribute those assets, as Brooke has said, to the vaccine injured so that they have medical care and things that they need.
All right, Warner Mendenhall, attorney and owner of the law offices of Warner Mendenhall. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And now to Russia, where a pro-war blogger was killed in an explosion at a cafe. An anti-war activist gave him a gift that exploded. NTD's Jason Perry has more details.
Anyone in Russia who criticizes the war in Ukraine may be arrested. For instance, a Russian man, Alexei Moskalyov, was recently sentenced to 2 years in prison after he was accused of repeatedly sharing anti-war posts online. But on the other hand, pro-war military blogger Vladimir Tatarsky gained over 500,000 followers on Telegram. On Sunday, he was speaking to a group of about 100 people at a cafe in St. Petersburg, Russia, when this happened. He was killed and 30 people were injured. Police have now detained anti-war activist Daria Trepova in connection to the explosion. Witnesses say Trepova gave Tatarsky a statue of himself.
She brought this bust in a package and then went directly to the stage, presented it to Vladlen. And he told her, "Come in here. Why are you sitting so far away? Sit closer." She said, "Oh, I'm so shy." Well, she was sitting 3 to 5 meters from him, and a minute later there was an explosion.
On Monday, Russian police announced they had detained Trepova. Here's what she said when police questioned her.
Do you understand why you were detained?
For being at the place where Vladlen Tatarsky was killed.
What did you do?
I took the statuette there that exploded.
Who gave you the statuette?
Can I tell you later?
Tatarsky could now be the second pro-war influencer targeted in Russia since the nation invaded Ukraine. Previously, the daughter of a different activist, Alexander Dugin, was killed when a car bomb exploded in August 2022. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And we'll update you on that story as it develops. Now over to sports news. Here's NTD's Dave Martin with today's top stories.
Thank you, Steph. The men's NCAA championship game is tonight, with surprising San Diego State taking on Uconn as March Madness extends into April. The Aztecs advanced Saturday on a buzzer-beating shot by Lamont Butler that completed their comeback and marked their first lead of the second half with no time left. Uconn, meanwhile, topped Miami by 13 points and have won all 5 tournament games by double digits as they continue to blaze through the tournament. A win tonight would give the Huskies their 5th national title, all since 1999. Should San Diego State, who's never advanced this far, pull the upset, though, they would be the first from a non-power conference to win since the Running Rebels of UNLV did it back in 1990. Meanwhile, in the booth, tonight's Final Four game is the last one being called by CBS's Jim Nantz. The 63-year-old, who has been the voice of now 37 Final Fours, still has plans to continue to call the Masters, which is later this week, and NFL games. And for your sports viewing schedule tonight, outside the NCAA championship game, the NBA has a big night. 13 games planned, including one with a streaking Lakers team that's won 6 of their last 7 to move up to the 7th spot in the Western Conference with just 4 games left. They play at Utah. And in baseball, all 30 teams are in action tonight, including the reigning National League champion Philadelphia Phillies, who got swept by Texas. However, it's no fault of their new shortstop Trey Turner, who's continued his torrid hitting from the World Baseball Classic that is off to a blazing start. They'll play the Yankees in the Bronx. And finally, for you hockey fans, slow night in the NHL, just 3 games, but one with major playoff implications as the Vegas Golden Knights, who currently lead the Western Conference by a point, play at currently 4th place Minnesota, who trail just by 4 points with 6 games to play. And that's it for your sports news today. Steph, back to you.
Thanks, Dave. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. Good night.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.